Welcome back to the podcast. My name is Matt Diavella, and you're listening to The Ground Up Show. Today, I'm sitting down to chat with a very creative YouTuber, lifestyle blogger, and artist. Her name is Eileen Shu, and online she goes by the name Lavender. We discuss minimalism and how it might apply to your life, how she got into it, and really break down the benefits of minimalism. We talk about building a brand and business outside of YouTube, how to make a sustainable living and income online, and how to organize your weeks to be more productive. Lots and lots of actionable steps to help you on your journey. Like I mentioned last week, I am in the middle of creating a course. It's about habit change. It's going to be a 3-week course, really diving deep and breaking down what it takes to build successful habits. The plan is that you will take this course with a habit in mind that you want to stick with, and the course will help guide you along that process. So if you want to find out about when that course is available, just go to mattdiavella.com/newsletter. That's mattdiavella.com/newsletter. If you're already signed up for the newsletter, you will get an update for when that becomes available. Enjoy this week's podcast. Our paths kind of crossed a little bit a couple years ago when I reached out to you to use a clip in minimalism.
I know.
And you were super generous to let us use that.
Yeah.
So it's really cool to kind of come full circle and have you on the podcast here to chat a little bit about your journey. Cool. Yeah. So you've been into minimalism for a while. Like, when did you first hear about it? When did you first start taking interest in minimalism and simple living?
Probably around 2014. So that was... the first place I read about this term minimalism was from Blake Mikowski, the founder of Tom's, in his book, Start Something That Matters. I'm not sure if that's the name. Anyway, he talks about how even though he's like the founder of this big company, he's actually a minimalist, and he sold all his things and lives on a boat. So as reading that story, it was like a new concept to me, because growing up, I think in my household, my mom loved to like shop for sales and discounts, and we're the type of people that would just buy things if they were on sale. And because my mom's an immigrant, she went through the Vietnam War, came here as a refugee. I think because they lost everything back then, once she came here, they would keep everything. You have a tendency to hoard because they're like, oh, like, what if something bad happens again? But I was born in that kind of household where you would buy a lot of things, take a lot of free unnecessary things, and then just hoard it. And like, honestly, the Blake Mikowski book got me thinking like, that's an interesting way to live. Why would anyone want to live like that? And then after that, I found out about the book, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up by Marie Kondo. And that book, after reading it, it's really convincing. I'm sure you've read it, right?
I actually have.
Oh, you haven't?
I'm a horrible minimalist.
Oh my God.
No, it's hard. It's like once you get into the topic, like I've read a ton of books on minimalism and obviously devoured blog posts.
Oh, so you're probably like over it by the time that book came out.
Yeah, like at that point I had been maybe 4 or 5 years into it. Although, man, I should do it just because it's been such an influential book on culture.
It's such an influential book, and it defined minimalism in a very specific way. So I think I go with her definition of it, and her definition is keep only what sparks joy. And she has a very specific way of like how to declutter your life by category. So anyway, I read the book, and I actually like went through decluttering my life in all of her categories, from like clothes, papers, and books, and miscellaneous stuff. And after decluttering, this was around 2015, I documented my journey on YouTube. And I really felt like before decluttering, I felt like I was very lost in life. I was cluttered. And then after the decluttering like whole journey, I really felt more clear. And I think that's what minimalism does. You feel like a weight has been lifted off your shoulders. And for some reason, I was more motivated in life. And it might have been synonymous with some other things, but I felt like after minimalism and all that journey, I feel like that's how my channel started taking off. Right?
It helps to kind of clarify your vision. And like you have to, in order to say no to certain things or to get rid of things, you have to realize what you're saying yes to, which was like the spark joy element. Yeah, so that just resonated with you right away. You kind of hear this and you're like, oh, okay, how can I start to apply this to my own life?
Yeah, because the book is just very encouraging, and she literally convinces you like this will change your life, and after you go through my process, like you don't have to tidy again. But so it was very convincing, and after I did it, like it changed my mindset, because I started to. Because once you start decluttering your things, it really applies to all the other areas in life, because you learn to like keep only what sparks joy or makes you happy, and then push out what's not. So you can do that with your relationships, with how you like manage your time. So I started to, I think, just subconsciously apply that into all other areas of my life, to the point where you're literally like filtering through all the negativity, filtering through all the unnecessary like clutter of your life, mental clutter, spiritual, emotional clutter, like doing that. So I think that's really what helped me, I don't know, cleanse and get a real restart.
Right. Well, there's so much noise. There, whether it's, TV or social media or the actual physical stuff in your house, there's so many influences on our lives that I think for a lot of people, they gravitate towards minimalism to find some sense of control, because their lives feel like, I'm not even making decisions anymore.
It's true.
How did your decision making change once you started to, do you call yourself a minimalist, or once you started living more of a minimalist lifestyle?
Yeah, I do consider myself having a minimal mindset. And when you talk about decision making, I think that's a key, because before this whole mindset, I would listen to what other people had to say. I would take everyone's opinions. I'm originally, like, I'm a Libra, so I consider myself an indecisive person. So every life decision, I would ask all my friends and family, like, what do you think? What should I do? And obviously, like, now that you're more mature, like, no one can answer those questions for you. Only you can. And I didn't know that, or didn't realize that before, but going, like, kind of adopting that mindset, the minimalism mindset, I started to realize, like, no, I am in control of what I want in my life, and what I don't have to listen to what this person says, or I don't have to take your opinion into consideration. So it's like really learning to separate your voice. Because so during KonMari, the first category you declutter is clothes, and you separate your clothes, like, do I want to keep this? Does this spark joy? And in the beginning, it's really hard to decide whether you want to keep it or not. And then after a while, your intuition grows stronger, right? You kind of know yourself more, like, okay, this feels right, or this doesn't feel right. So in the beginning, I was very, like, indecisive. My intuition wasn't strong. And then after the whole, like, decluttering everything that I physically had, I felt like it helped my intuition grow.
Okay, yeah. So the intuition, that's an important word, because that's kind of almost the underlying decision-making processes that we make. Because you get 10, you wake up and then you check your email and you've got 10, 20 emails that you have to go through. You probably get way more than that on a daily basis. Yeah. And then you have to realize and decide, okay, do I respond to this one? Is this something, that I can respond to quickly? Is this a task that's going to take 30 minutes? Or is this a decision that if I make the wrong decision, it's going to be 20 hours of my life then wasted?
So intuition, it teaches you how to prioritize things in your life. Now I don't feel as guilty for not replying to this email. I think before you would, like, there's a people pleaser part of me that wanted to, listen to other people and please them or answer their email immediately. So now there's less of that, because I control my time.
Yeah, I think setting filters is a pretty good way to do that as well. Like, I'll try to do that specifically with email on my contact page on my website, or even through YouTube on the contact page. Usually that's where a lot of emails come through. And then just let people know, hey, get a lot of emails, probably not going to respond to everyone, because I'm making this stuff that you guys are messaging me about to begin with. And I think that helps. And I think people truly understand that you need to set those boundaries, and you need to make sure that you're creating and designing a life that you're happy and passionate about.
Yeah.
And that's what, like, a big part of what you do as well is this lifestyle design, which has become, like, hugely popular, and probably since around 2010 or so it started to grow. What drew you to it originally?
So I think around 2010, that was when I was about a junior in college. And growing up, I've always been, like, a good student. I've been good at school because I think I'm good at following rules. If you give me a syllabus or give me homework, like, there's steps. Like, I know how to get it done. I'll do a good job. And I've always been proud of myself. I've taken pride in like being ambitious and achieving. And I went to USC. I was studying business because I thought that was like a generic major where I could get a job that paid a lot of money. That's really what I thought. And it was around, I think, junior year where you have to start thinking about what career you want to go into after you graduate. And then that was, I was just so stumped because throughout college, I was really ambitious at getting internships. So I had internships in different like advertising agencies, entertainment companies. And I felt like with every experience in the corporate world, I hated it, to be honest. I didn't feel like I fit, and I felt like I wasn't using my full potential in that scenario. I would fast forward like, okay, if I do this job and I fast forward like 5 years, where will I be? And I'll look at the person who's worked there for like 5 years and be like, I don't want that. Like that's not really the life I want. And it didn't excite me. So I was just so frustrated. And I went through this whole life confused, soul searching period, junior and senior year of college. And that was around 2010, 2011. And I felt like every conversation with my friends was so dramatic. It was like, this is the time where everyone's lost and we're just like, oh my God, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
Let's just start a company, or let's do this. Like, we're just dreaming, but having no idea about our lives. So that was about the time where I think I suddenly discovered all these. Okay, I'll tell you how I discovered my first self-help book. It was this bookstore chain, Borders. They were having a closing sale in my hometown because all these bookstores were going out of business. So I remember being there in like the dollar section, because everything was like super cheap. The dollar section, there was a book called Caught Between a Job and a Dream. Something like that, where it was a book for people who are in a corporate job that they hate and teaching them how to get out of it. So me being like in college, I'm like, oh, that's my future. I might as well read that book now.
Right, get ahead of the game.
Get ahead of the game and figure it out. So that book really taught me all these terms that were now probably more mainstream, like how to find your purpose in life. That was something that was completely new to me back then. So
it is kind of crazy to think about it, because that really, you see it everywhere. And now it almost
gets a little cheesy, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's actually kind of challenging, I would say, for the both of us and what we do to try to connect with those people who maybe feel lost, who maybe feel not inspired by what they're doing, because you have so much, as we talked about before, noise. And now we have noise about people that are trying to sell you
now on Facebook, you'll see the ads and a lot of workshops. So it is pretty like noisy now. But I mean, just thinking back then, as a young, confused college grad, I was like, wow, this is life-changing. Because I think most people, I'm not sure if you feel this, but I had an innate feeling that I was meant to do bigger things, or I was meant for something. Like I didn't have the word for it. Like I just wanted my life to matter in a way. And so when I was in college, the only way that I thought I could do that was like, oh, I guess work for a nonprofit or something, like, because I wanted to help people and do something that was meaningful and mattered, which is why I also like started reading that book about the Tom's founder, because I like that like business plus social giving model. But anyway, so that book got me into personal growth, and from there I started reading all these other books, and I think over time it just added up to like all this knowledge, and eventually I was like, I have so much knowledge, and it really helped me in my life. I was like, I have to share it somewhere. And that's kind of what inspired Lavender.
It's kind of crazy to think that you were at one point pursuing a degree in business. And while, like, I mean, technically business probably helped you a lot with where you are now, and now you're an entrepreneur and you're doing your own thing. But at the same time, a business degree to me is very black and white. It's almost like it's very mundane. I took a couple business classes in college, and they're making you do create your business plan, and it's all regimented, and it's like that's not really how it works in the real world. And now you look
it's
at
part of it, but it's not everything.
It's part of it, and I think that everybody's path is so individualistic, and it's hard to say. As you know, it's like 5 years from now, what is your business going to look like?
Yeah.
Where's your revenue stream going to be? It's like, that's crazy questions to even be asking.
Yeah.
But what I love is that, like, I mean, it couldn't be any more different from what you're doing now, from like how your brand and what you put out in the world is. It's so colorful. It's so bright. It's so creative. It's such the opposite of what I would think about as a business degree.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I was totally like, I even considered going into finance and being like a banker, just because back then you had your parents' voice in your head, right? Like get a job where you're going to, make a lot of money. And that was that. So
yeah, you said what, a C+ is an F in an Asian family.
Oh, yeah. It is.
There's a lot of pressure that your parents put on you early on.
Yeah.
Does that pressure still come into play now? Would they prefer you to be a lawyer or a doctor, or more of a traditional path?
I think up until like these past couple years, yes. I think now I'm finally in a place where my parents understand what I do, and they're like, wow, you're making money doing this? Like, okay, I guess as long as you're happy. So I think it goes with like parents also maturing. Like when your parents get older, they kind of care a little bit less, maybe worry a little bit less. That's just naturally what happens. But yeah, really, like throughout college or just throughout my life, my parents were they had high expectations for me. I think a lot of it is like, oh, we sacrificed a lot in our lives for us to pay for you to go to college and all of this. And there's a lot of pressure to succeed and do well to make your parents proud, because you really do appreciate their efforts.
Success meant something very specifically when our parents were younger and they were starting to kind of create their lives. And, for a lot of parents of our generation, I would say, they were working jobs that they weren't passionate about. They didn't really love. They had to sacrifice. They had to sacrifice a lot. And now we definitely are privileged to be at a place where we can kind of push the needle a little bit further and say, you know what, like I just don't want to work a job that doesn't really fulfill me. Yeah. Like when I'm spending 8 to 10 hours a day working, I want to actually like the work I'm doing and feel like I'm making a difference. So I think it's going to slowly change. Yeah. I think we're getting to a point now. I see us
changing. Like I think our generation is so blessed that we have the choice to like follow our passions. And I think we had to kind of, there was like a friction between our parents' generation, because they were like so about like sacrifice. But now I don't know. The trend is going towards like letting people love their lives and love what they do.
Yeah. Is there another aspect that we kind of touched on that is negative, where maybe there's almost like there's two paths that you can take when going this untraditional route or creating your own thing, whether you're going to be an author or a filmmaker. Some people can go the route that feels a little bit shallow, and it almost feels like they're doing it just to prove that they're doing something cool and they're doing something exciting, and maybe it's, there's not an underlying...
But if that's your reason, you're not going to make it very far, right? Because to be in the arts, like you have to really commit and love it.
Yeah, I think that's why
I don't think you can fake that kind of success.
Right. I guess it would only work out if they got lucky early on. Maybe. And sometimes you see that where certain people just, they blow up, whether on Instagram or otherwise, and they get a huge audience. And then maybe that continues to validate it. But you're totally right. That's why you have so many blogs, and I'm probably the creator of 7 of them that are, hey, sorry, I haven't posted in a while. Like you start a blog and then you stop it, and that's
it's not easy.
It's part of being a creative, right?
Yeah.
It's why, in your experience, I'm sure you've started a lot of things that did not go the distance.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Why do those things fail? Why do you think those things didn't keep up?
Okay, so a lot of things. One is like my music career. So I started posting music, like singing and playing piano videos on YouTube since high school. And throughout college, I was posting just as a hobby, like posting very sporadically. And deep down, I really wanted to make it work. Obviously, deep down, you want it to grow. And there was like, this is the first wave of like YouTube stars back then. And I remember being really into it. But I think the reason why that didn't take off is because I was not consistent with it. I was not consistent with posting. I would post like once a month or once every other month. It's just, you can't sustain something that way. So that's a big one. When I started Lavender, I made a promise to myself that I'll post once a week, like very strict schedule. And that's really how you develop like the commitment to, because it takes work. You can't just be like lazy, like, oh, I feel like posting today, or I don't feel like posting today. You really have to like schedule it in. So that's like one of the reasons why that thing didn't work out. I mean, there's a few other things that I failed or didn't work out in life. For example, like I went into acting for a little bit, and I think that one, I just didn't have the hustle in me. I didn't have the hustle to like drive to auditions every day and get rejected. I felt like I was wasting my time.
It's hard. The acting,
because the reward is so sporadic. Like,
it's so sporadic, and there's also it's not the same way as whether like starting YouTube, filmmaking, whatever, where you can continually work on that craft and you can get consistent feedback, and then you can build upon that and grow. Acting is, you have to have others. You know what I mean? Like, how much can you practice
you're waiting
in front
for
of the
someone
mirror?
Exactly. You're waiting for someone else to validate you and give you a job so you can practice. But then, I mean, it was just slow in my head, too slow for me.
Yeah, that is something I'm interested in though too. Is like, how can actors, how can they make a name for themselves in a way that's not tied to the traditional forms of making it as an actor, like going in through auditions every day? It's like, maybe it is, starting a YouTube channel, or,
I think you have to use social media now.
Yeah.
It's better for you as a personal brand.
Well, because that's actually one of the reasons why I started my YouTube channel was because I didn't want to be beholden to anybody else to make decisions for me. I wanted to be like, well, if I want to make a film about this, if I have an audience, then I can create it. And now it's becoming less like, you don't have to be on Netflix, or you don't have to be on Hulu or any platform. You can just release stuff directly to YouTube, and you can make a living off of that.
Yeah, that's the power of it. I thought about that too. It's like, I wasn't sure what kind of channel I wanted to create in the beginning, but I'm like, I just knew I wanted to start a YouTube channel, because I was like, whatever I do in the future, like if I have an audience, it's going to help it no matter what. So it doesn't matter what industry you're doing. I think having social media helps.
Right. And you were saying that the consistency is one of the most important things.
Consistency is really about, for me, it's about building the habit of like putting something out there consistently, meaning like, because artists tend to really be perfectionists over their work, or we tend to procrastinate. And if you don't have that strict schedule, you're going to give yourself too much time, and you know what I mean? You're just never going to put things out. You're going to continue like working on it or perfecting it. So for me, it was learning to just work on something until it's good enough and then put it out there. It doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be amazing. Like, it was about like, just finish it and then put it out. And I think that's so important if you want to grow as an artist, because if you take too long working on something, like the time is just going to pass by and you're not going to have anything done. So with music, I think I took too long. I was like, I want to make this song so good, or, there's just too many barriers.
Yeah, we get a little bit too romantic about our creations, that they have to be absolutely perfect. And it's funny though, because now with the game with YouTube, you could put a video out there that you spent weeks on, and you're like, oh, like this is amazing. It's gonna do really well, and like it just has a perfect tone and pace, and I really perfected it. Yeah. And then that video gets
nobody
watches that video, and then the video that's got a good thumbnail or title just goes bonkers crazy, and it
could be a low, like easier to produce thing. Yeah. So
that maybe says something a little bit about playing the game and when to know when to play it, and then also knowing when to create for yourself.
Yeah.
But I think that the key there is just not overdoing your perfection, and just making sure that you keep putting it out there. I remember when I started freelancing, one of the earliest jobs, I think it took me like a month to edit it. It was a basketball event, and it was kind of timely. It's like, hey, we want to get this out there pretty quickly. And I did a really good job on it. I thought I knocked it out of the park. But for me, I'm like, as I grew and as I started to get more work, I realized I would get a lot better if I worked on 10 videos over that period of time versus
just that one video
over 1 month.
Yeah, you learn as with each project that you do. So if you're creating weekly videos for a year, like that's like 52 videos already. So it's like, I have about like 300 something videos on my channel. So just the sheer amount of like work that you do compared to like, I have other director friends that they don't do YouTube, but they're like working on one short film a year or one, you know what I mean? It's slower.
Yeah, it's harder to see that feedback loop, because the feedback is important. If we were putting stuff out there and nobody ever resonated with us, we wouldn't keep doing it, or we'd at least change something and figure out, okay, how can I get this message heard? When you started to create on YouTube, you start to get a little bit of feedback. You have this YouTube channel that starts to do a little bit well. Do you feel a pressure, like an urgency to keep going? And is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I think it could be both. The pressure to keep going, because now you have people who are expecting you to post, and the pressure part is they're expecting you to put out a specific type of video. Maybe they really, like during the minimalism wave, people loved minimalism, but I didn't want to be just a channel about minimalism, because I like other topics within lifestyle design. So I felt the pressure. People are like always asking for minimalism videos. But then me, I'm like, that makes me not want to do minimalism videos, because I want to do what I want to do. So there's kind of like a battle going on within me. Like I want to continue creating what I want to create versus what other people want to see. But I know that, sometimes there's got to be a balance there.
There is, I think, where, I mean, even right now for me, I try to throw in, because I do enjoy talking about minimalism and simple living. Obviously, it's a big part of my life. So, but there's a balance there where maybe every other week I'll release a video on minimalism or around simple living, and then the other videos would be podcast related or creative related. I feel like you do a very similar thing too, where it's very heavily focused on creativity. Bit, and then you kind of have to be mindful of, like, if I enjoy it and my audience enjoys it, then that's probably a good use of my time to be able to give them what they want. But yeah, what's the longest that you've gone without, you said you have this consistency of uploading a video every week. What's the longest you've gone without posting a video?
In like the 4 years that I've ran this channel, probably the longest is like 2 weeks of not posting. And maybe it's because I'm on vacation or something, but then
Slacker. It's terrible. That's a very short period of time, right?
Yeah. I've never gone longer than 2 weeks of not posting.
Yeah, and at some point it just becomes normal. I mean, this is how long did it take for it to become your job, where you made a living off of it?
Maybe like 2 years into it.
2 years into it.
Or 2.5, yeah.
And when did you start?
2014. So around end of 2016 and beginning of 2017. That's where I was like, oh, this is good, and I feel confident in it as a career.
Right. I think what's interesting about coming from your perspective is a lot of people see themselves as just YouTubers and that's it, but you've branched out outside of YouTube, and you're more of like a creative entrepreneur than you are just a YouTuber. No shame on anybody who is a YouTuber. I think it works, but I think that, like, it's kind of, it limits how much you can grow, both as an artist and as an entrepreneur and somebody who is trying to make a living off of their craft. What have you learned about kind of stepping off of YouTube a little bit and then creating your own platform, you've got like a Facebook community and a podcast and all this other stuff? I
think it's important to kind of not put all your eggs in one basket, because when you're just focusing, like, if everything that you have is just on YouTube, like, the algorithm's always changing. And I've seen channels like the algorithm changes on them, and then no one just watches their videos anymore. They could have 1 million subscribers, but like no views. And so it is a scary thing. And I think that's why I like to have other platforms. It's like diversify your career a little bit.
It's like finances.
It is like finance, because you learn to diversify your portfolio. So it's the same idea. Also, like, something like building an email list, it's not as popular with younger social media people, but that's something I've started to do, because you own your email list. Like, you own the communication between you and that person. Like, the platform can't take that away from you, like what Facebook and Instagram or YouTube will do, because those platforms, they're just trying to make money from like ads, right? So eventually, like, I don't know. It's
well, yeah. I mean,
you don't control that.
Yeah, I think that for the younger generation, they're not as attracted to the mailing list because it doesn't provide the vanity metrics that I think a lot of people are drawn to. It's because, and I mean, dude, I totally get it, and we all fall prey to this a little bit, where it's nice to know that you have an audience and a following, and you want that almost as a validation for what you're doing, especially if you're following something that's untraditional, especially if your parents are like, are you sure you want to go down this path? So I could see people being drawn to that. But if you're business minded, then it doesn't matter what the metrics are. It doesn't matter if you have 1,000 followers or 100,000, because that does not mean you're going to be making a living off of it just because you have followers. So you have this email list. When did you start it, and kind of how do you go about creating content for them specifically?
I'm not super great at running it. I'll say that.
That's why I asked, because I'm really bad at it too.
I might have started it like over a year ago, but I think last year was where I really started to kind of do things to drive people to the list. Like I'll give out free worksheets where people sign up the email list to get the worksheet. But that's just been helpful for selling things, as like with my workbook. I have an Artist of Life workbook, which is like this end of the year planner where you review the past year, plan your goals for the next year, and it goes really detailed. So that's like, it's nice when you're pushing something like that you have like an email list to tell people in advance, like for a pre-sale and stuff. So for the list, I think I email them bi-weekly, so every other week. But at the same time, I'm not super like that's where I'm a little slacking off because my focus is like on YouTube. Yeah. No, it's hard to do it all.
No, I completely agree. That's a challenge, and that's where for me minimalism comes into work and productivity and trying to be very specific about what you do.
Yeah.
Because there are 5 to 10 social media apps that are popular to use. For me, I'm like, I can't keep up on everyone. Yeah, even if I'm like pushing to these other ones, for me, I'm like, it's not worth it. It's still an attention time.
You have to just prioritize which ones are most important to you and just focus on like the 1 or 2 platforms that you want.
Yeah. And email is the one that's like on the periphery where I'm like, for me, what I do is like, if I make a video that I think would resonate with that audience, then I will just write some copy for that video. And, a lot of times we need copy for the video's description anyway. So I'll kind of just expand on that and then just put a link to the video to check it out as a way to like, let them know I'm still alive.
That's totally fine. Cause it really is just kind of like you sending an email to your friends and family, like, hey, by the way, like check out, this is what I'm doing. This is what you might like to see. So I like it because it feels personal and people can reply and they email me back and it goes straight to my inbox. I don't think people realize that they can reply to me and then I'll reply back. So it feels very like one-on-one.
Right. And I think that's where you can start to develop a little bit of a community. Because as much as like that's overused, like building a community, you can really start to develop relationships with audience members and you can actually give back in a more intimate way. And I think an email newsletter is probably the best way to do it because then
it feels exclusive.
Yeah. And that person like it's an ongoing relationship and it's like they want to hear from you. If they trust you enough to give you their email address, that says a lot.
Yeah.
Because I know that I don't like getting. I unsubscribe from every. I maybe 1 or 2 people I follow their newsletters.
Me too.
Yeah, it's like, but it's a very finite list, and that's just extra noise in your inbox. It's like kind of
meaning like the people who are in your email list, they really want to hear from you.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there best practices of like building an audience? Because there's a lot of people that do some shady things. Like if you email them once about something, they'll take your name and put it on your email list. Like what if you learned about that and like communicating and with an audience?
I think you just have to be transparent and now there's more, like recently there's like a new EU regulation called GDPR. It's really boring, but now there's like legal rules where you have to have people like opt in and specifically tell them how you're going to use their information. So I think you do have to be transparent about that stuff.
It's kind of like this new privacy policy. Yes. How many emails you get a day where it's like, we changed our privacy policy.
Yes. If you've noticed that, it's because there's a new law that literally just happened like this month.
So what does that mean for us? Have you changed anything because of it?
I have. Yeah. You have to like change all your forms and you have to like have everyone on your list reconfirm again that they want to be on your list.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's been a really like
I did not know that.
yeah. That's why everyone's like updating you and stuff.
Oh man, I might have to I guess I got to do that. What happens if you don't? You just get in trouble?
Well, it's focused on the people in the EU. So if you have audiences in the EU, then you have to get them to reconfirm.
Yeah,
I got some, for the podcast.
I don't know, man. I got a lot of German
so you should maybe look into it. I mean, I don't know if it's a big deal. Like, how are they going to catch you?
Sounds to me like the same conversations I have about taxes, which is an even more interesting topic to talk about on this podcast.
I hate taxes. I hate talking about that stuff.
All I'm going to say, I just want to ask you a question. So, are you good with your taxes, or are you? And now you're on the record, so you have to
I'm really lucky because my mom is a tax accountant. So I literally just like. Mom, help me with this.
Yeah. But I think it's important though for people who are trying to start something on their own to like really take that seriously. Yeah. Because you can't go back and fake it later. You can't do some Breaking Bad shit where you're faking receipts and stuff.
Yeah.
You got to actually make sure you're on top of your finances, collecting your receipts.
Like start off on the right foot.
Yeah. Right? That's my PSA. I got to do one tax PSA every podcast episode. And I'm glad we fit it in.
Yeah.
So when you're looking back, is there something that you would do differently at the start of your channel, at the start of growing your audience?
There's two answers, because on one hand, like, you can never wish anything was different, because I like where I am now, so no regrets on that end. But if I were to look like practically, things that I could have done better is I wish I started my channel earlier. I think that's something a lot of people wish that they started earlier, because for so many years I was just doubting myself. So even as I was doing the music YouTube, that music channel wasn't working out, but I would watch all of these other vloggers, like fashion vloggers, beauty vloggers, and I would really envy their life. And I just felt like that was me being like a fan and just envying them. But I think deep down it was because I wanted that life. I wanted to be a creator and, you know, travel and do what they're doing. So I had to get honest with myself to like be like, okay, yes, I admit I want to be a YouTuber. It sounded cheesy because I graduated from college. It was like 2 years after I graduated, and all my friends are like in big corporate finance jobs. And I mean, maybe it's more mainstream now, but back then it sounded like such a corny thing to say, I want to be a YouTuber back then.
Yeah, it's
right.
It's,
especially if you're older. If you're like 18, sure, fine. But if you're like 23, 24, I don't know.
But I still think the comparison too, even today, is pretty challenging when people are going off and getting real world salaries, and you're pursuing a career that is so unguaranteed. I think it can be looked down upon.
I did feel like I was looked down upon, especially because in school I was like smart. I was prideful on like how smart and capable I was, and yet like I didn't get a real job, and I decided to do YouTube. It just seemed like why did I go to college? Why did I, I felt really unconfident about myself. But anyway, my wish is like that I got over that like self-doubt earlier on and just started earlier. And also like I think in the beginning my video topics were just not good, but maybe I just had to learn how to make better videos.
Well, I think that's part of it. I think it's like pretty young when you originally started and even made like that first YouTube channel, and there's like, I think it takes some life experience and like going through some difficult and challenging times to be able to talk about that later on. But I think that's probably the hardest thing to do for a lot of people today, is that they're growing up online, and a lot of people are going through like 13 to 16 years old, putting everything on the internet. And I feel terrible for them, because if I had my thoughts going out into the world at 13, I don't think I'd ever get a job, or I'd never get a client.
I was so melodramatic, like the things that you were thinking back then.
It's kind of hard. You have to that people have to go through that, but but yeah, I don't think you're always going to feel like you're starting too late. I think anything that you start, you're like, oh, podcast 2018. If you're going to start it then, it's too late. The wave is over.
People were always saying that the wave is over. Like, don't start YouTube now. The wave is over. But you just have to not listen to that and just start.
Yeah, and I've given that advice too, where I would say, oh, blogging, like the wave's over. Why would you even blog now? But then it's like, of course you can make it. Of course, if you can make it on YouTube today, I think YouTube is just as it's way more popular today than it's ever been. So these platforms just continue to grow.
You know what? I think people just underestimated these platforms. They thought that it peaked and that it's over now, but I don't think social media has peaked. I mean, it's going to keep growing, right? Yeah.
And it's not going to be easy. So maybe if you were hoping that if you got in early, like at MySpace, there were people that got in really early, and then they were able to leverage that. But it's like, you know what? It's going to take a lot of work to be able to make it. You're going to have to put in the time when nobody is listening or nobody's watching to be able to make it.
Yeah. And you know what my challenge and my question now is, how do you keep it, like, how do you have longevity with the internet? How do you keep it going? Because like with the first wave of YouTube or whatever, you've seen channels blow up and then kind of like drop off. And I think back then you would think that they would be successful forever, but now I'm seeing that's not the case. And right there, because there's so many new people coming onto the scene, and they kind of push the old people out. Well, what I'm seeing is like back then maybe their viewers were in college, and then maybe now their viewers have families and don't have time to watch YouTube, and so your audience changes. So things are always changing.
Yeah, and I think that it means that we should be changing ourselves.
Yeah,
and like
you have to
can't
always
just
be evolving.
Right, because if you just keep speaking to that same audience that you had started out with, your audience is changing over time, and eventually you're gonna lose them.
Yeah.
Because
like, who did you used to watch 10 years ago? Like, do you still watch them now?
10 years ago. Oh goodness.
2008.
2008.
YouTube was was out.
2 years it was 2 years out. I was in college. I don't know if I was watching many YouTube. Were you always a fan of watching YouTubers?
I was.
Yeah. So who was big around that time?
Like Michelle Phan, like the beauty YouTubers back then.
Is she still going?
She stopped making videos, but she's more of a businesswoman. She has a makeup brand. Yeah,
so
I
you
miss
can
her
always
videos.
oh really?
Yeah.
Let's get her back into it. So you can always like transition out of it. I mean, there's people Casey Neistat, obviously.
Oh yeah.
And he just restarted up
That's
his
true.
vlog after a while. I mean,
I've always seen him as like solid. He's
it's kind
great.
of right. It's kind of hard to picture Casey Neistat because he's so big.
Yeah.
But I think he does prove that you can kind of take a little step away from it, and then you can come back, and then your audience will likely still be there.
Yeah, that's true.
Because I think every once in a while
I think because he's so authentic and he's doing so many things right.
Yeah,
people love him.
Let's actually we touched on a couple topics here that were in some of these Instagram questions that I pulled. So let's get into these, and then we can go from there. Okay. So Nicole Durrett, she's a graphic designer. How do you start a channel and keep yourself motivated even if the subscriber count doesn't go up? So this is kind of like what we were just talking about. It's like how do you keep that momentum going when nobody's watching and nobody's listening?
Yeah. I remember when I started, for a whole year I was making weekly videos and no one was really watching or commenting. It was growing so slow. So I understand you have to find a topic that you're so passionate about, like something that you have like a million ideas about. You have to love this topic or this niche so much that you feel like you'll never run out of ideas. And I think you really have to do it for the fun of it. You have to enjoy making videos and enjoy editing because that's what takes up most of your time. Right. And if you don't enjoy the process, you're not going to make it very far. You have to enjoy, like, it's kind of a game you play with yourself, kind of like, can I make this video better than the last? Like, how can I do things differently this video? It has to be your own personal project rather than like, oh, I'm putting this out there for other people to see it. It really is like, this is just my project to practice and my project to, like, you're doing it for yourself.
Dude, that really resonates with me. When I first started, I started making videos in like 2000 and, well, it's kind of hard. It was in high school, so it's probably 2004 or so. And even before that was like making these horror movies with my parents' VHS camera.
Oh, cool.
And like you think about what was my audience then? It was my parents, it was my friends, and in school when I started in high school, shooting on a Sony Handycam. YouTube was there, but nobody was uploading videos, at least like me and my friends. We were just making videos for ourselves. And like they were all inside jokes. Yeah. Nothing would have been, that's
the best. It's like so fun for you guys.
Yeah. And like if it's an audience of 5 or 10 people, but like I just remember loving the craft and loving stitching together videos and creating a story that didn't exist before. Yeah. And it didn't have to get 1 million views. And I think now we get a little bit too caught up, and this may be cliche advice, but I think we do get too caught up in the views, the likes, and all that stuff, and we need to just focus on, do I actually really love this thing? Because it is sexy now to be a filmmaker or a YouTuber or to have a large following on Instagram, but if you don't actually love what you're doing, you're just like the person that's following a 9-to-5 job for money. You're just doing it for the money. You're not doing it because you really like it. Right. Is there advice there for people to help find their passion? Because is that a straightforward pursuit? Is this something everybody's built? Yeah, everybody's born obvious. With one thing.
It's not obvious for everyone. Some people are born and they know they really like this thing, but most people, even myself, like you're just kind of wishy-washy about all these different things. So I think to find your passion is to pay attention to the things that you're curious about. And it could be, as you're scrolling like social media, like what kind of posts are you curious about? What gets your interest? And then kind of dig deeper into those interests. Because say like, you notice that you care about like environmental issues, dig deep into that. So I think it's about like discovering what you're curious about and then just like dig deep and see if you genuinely love it. Yeah.
What are your passions, and are there some of those that do not fit under the umbrella of your blog and your YouTube channel? Like, are there some that you're like, oh, well, I'm never going to make money talking about rock climbing?
I mean, I'm passionate about, like, I love music, singing, dancing, and I guess I'm passionate about, like, being a good person, like being kind. And I think most of the things I'm passionate about, like making videos and writing, it does fit under the umbrella of my YouTube, but some things are just like outside. But I think everything is creative. So even if I like singing, but I don't really sing on this channel anymore, it's still like, everything overlaps in a way.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to almost define when work begins and ends.
Yeah.
Do you put in many hours? Like, do you have a set schedule where you're like, all right, Monday to Friday's work, or do you shoot videos on the weekends?
I try to work on the weekday and have the weekends free. Sometimes I do work on like one weekend day, but so I set like blocked days where like Mondays and Tuesdays will be my shooting and editing days, and then Wednesdays is more like admin and catching up with stuff. I record podcasts on Friday or on Thursdays. Like that, Thursdays are like my meetings with other people and podcast days, and then Fridays just open for random miscellaneous activities. So I try to like group tasks together like that, because I feel like that makes me more productive.
Right. So how does that make you more productive in terms of setting your schedule in that way? Where, I mean, to me, that sounds like a dream.
Oh, yeah.
To have like, it's such structure, and actually an expectation of knowing what your weeks usually look like, and you can kind of get into a rhythm, and especially with the creativity we're talking about, you have to sit down and do this work every single week.
Yeah.
So how has that helped you be more productive?
Yeah, I think it's just more productive to focus on like one type of task at a time. So like taking this day just to like edit videos or something, because if you're switching between different tasks, there's something called context switching. You actually lose like 20% productivity or 20% of your attention span during that switching time, because it takes time to like once you start a task, you're not fully immersed. It takes time to immerse yourself and get in that flow. So it's better to like switch less. And also, I consider myself more of an introvert, so if I have to meet with people, it's kind of exhausting. Like after a meeting, I have to like, I don't know, relax for an hour or something. So it's, for me, once I'm meeting with someone, it's easier to like have multiple meetings that day, 'cause since I'm already in that like socializing mood.
Yeah,
right.
I 100% agree,
Yeah.
and I'm definitely an introverted creator. Like when I'm making something and I'm writing and I'm editing a video, like all these acts for me, I don't do as well when other people are even in the same room.
Yeah. Because you feel a little like pressure. Like
I'm like, get out of here. Even if they're not working on the same thing I'm working, I'm like, I just need to be totally by myself in a room. Me too. But then, it's certainly a mindset shift when, the first I'm sure you've had this too, where like we work independently by ourselves, and then like, you're like, oh, I didn't go outside today. Oh, this is my first time speaking to another human today.
Yeah.
And like your brain isn't ready for those kinds of interactions, as silly as that sounds. But if I can schedule interviews back to back on the same day, you get yourself,
flows better, right?
Yeah, you get yourself into a talkative mood.
Yeah.
Your brain kind of switches on in a way where you're like, okay, this is what we're going to be doing today. Which some people can be just turned on from, the early morning, and they're extroverted and they can get right into it. But I feel like for people like us that maybe our nature is to be solo creators, it helps to kind of batch.
But I think for anyone, it's hard to like be on for an hour and then turn off and focus on like something quiet and then turn on again. It's not productive that way.
Do you batch a lot of your tasks, like email and social media and stuff like that? Yeah.
Like I try to just like not check email or not answer emails in the morning, and just kind of like finish the most important work, and then like have like, a few hours later in the day to tackle email. Or sometimes I'm really bad at answering emails. I'll just like not like wait a week, and then maybe like on Friday I'll answer all my emails, Yeah.
And then, so you're scrolling through your email inbox. How do you know is it kind of second nature to you now to know like what even emails you should be opening up, or do you tend to go through all of them?
Well, I tend to like go through them, and I like, I archive the ones that are just spam and I don't have to answer. If there's something really important, then I just star it, and maybe I know I have to get to that later that day. But yeah, I do that. Like if I open an email and I'm like, oh, this is really important, I'll mark it as unread. So it'll be there that I have to open it again.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because once the email is read, I forget about it.
You forget it exists. Dude, I do the same thing.
Even if I star it, because it just,
it's still there.
The visual is different.
Is like an unclick. Yeah, that's actually a really good tip. Because if a lot of times I'll use my inbox as a separate to-do list, because there's certain things that would be in your inbox that take a little bit of while to create. And then I have and I'm curious if you have this separately as well, like a to-do list of creative tasks.
Yeah.
How do you organize those tasks and know what you should be working on each day?
Usually I have a big to-do list. Like I have an app on my phone that has like to-do lists separated by category, kind of like website to-dos or YouTube to-dos. And then, but what I do is I have like a today section. I kind of like, I move what's the most important thing I want to do today. And then I focus on the today list.
Okay. And then is this, I'm also interested in morning/nighttime routine. Do you have either of those, or is it generally pretty fluid?
Routine?
Yeah, routines that are every day.
Morning routine, if I have time, I do have a routine where I like wake up, make tea, and then I love doing morning pages, which is like journaling 3 pages of like just stream of consciousness, meaning you don't filter yourself. So I'll do that, and then I'll meditate for like 15 to 20 minutes and then go on with my day. But sometimes I don't have time and I just skip those, or maybe I'll journal at night.
Journaling is a pretty big part of...
I love journaling so much.
Yeah. How has it helped you?
In so many ways. It's my way of talking to myself and like digging deep to see what I'm really feeling, what I'm really thinking. And I think I tend to be like, because the way that I am on my channel is like I'm like a life coach type of person, and that's how I am in real life. I always like to give advice to my friends, so when I journal, I'm giving advice to myself. So I'm just coaching myself, like you know you can really change your mindset. It
doesn't always come natural to people to ask really difficult questions, to think about where they want their life to go.
Yeah.
A lot of times it takes a significantly negative thing to happen in your life to bring about a change. Say a loved one dies, you realize that life is short. Like a lot of times that's what it takes. But if you can consistently journal or keep down your thoughts and try to really consistently work on yourself and improve yourself, then I feel like you're going to be able to get to that point before you ever have one of these crises.
You're right. Like you don't have to wait for a crisis to start changing your life. You can really do it anytime. I think most people in their normal life, they're scared to face, like there's a fear there. You don't want to face the ugly parts of you, or you don't want to admit that you have this weakness or this flaw or something. But when you're journaling, nobody else is reading it. So for me, that's where I can be the most honest with myself, because no one's judging me. So I could really just let it all out. And then that's how you have to reveal yourself and be aware of what's going on in order to work through it first. Most people, they don't even want to look at it. Right. So journaling is like a safe way to look at that and then work through it.
That's great. I have a question that's kind of relates to that, but more so is like how we bring our voice to the world. Kyle Follensby from Instagram asks, "Hi, Matt and Eileen. My question to either of you concerns creativity and how you created your own voice. I found that I have these great ideas on what I'd like to accomplish, but I realize that branding or creating a clear vision is almost necessary to sustain an audience. Can you explain how the initial steps of creating your voice came about and how you sustained it over time?"
Yeah, well, your voice is just like your true personality. I think it's easier to create a voice for like a person versus like a brand. That's anyway. But I think to start out, you're going to have to just experiment, right? There's no other way than to like experiment and see what feels right and do what's fun for you. And then a little tip is try not to like watch other people's stuff too much, because when you read or watch other people's stuff, it kind of becomes part of you. And I mean, that's how we are. Aren't we just like a mix of all the sources that we absorb?
Yeah,
right?
I think that's definitely
naturally that happens.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a conversation there, whether how much we should be consuming versus creating. I think that you can definitely gather inspiration from people. And I know early on, I certainly did copy other filmmakers' styles, but it was like my stuff wasn't being seen by anybody.
And you can learn from doing that too. You can learn how they create and stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's okay to be inspired by other people. It's even okay to like copy their work in order to learn, but not say that it's yours. Obviously it's like inspired, like when people make parodies or something like that. But I think eventually, as you continue creating, also with the consistency thing, like the more you create, the more you're gonna learn what is your voice, the more you're going to develop that voice too.
Yeah, I think there is a instinct in a lot of people that once the record button gets pressed, you have this personality that you then like almost change who you are to be more hey, I'm talking to a camera now. Hey, I'm talking to an audience. Or like if you're getting interviewed on TV, there's definitely a certain tone that you have in that conversation that you might not have with your friend in normal life. And I think what most of us are trying to get to is a point where we can just be ourselves and feel comfortable in our own skin. And I think it takes doing it a lot. It takes consistency. It takes every time you hit that record button, trying to just let go and trying to let go of this kind of character that you're creating to be yourself. And one way that I've actually I've also realized that it's about focusing on your strengths, and not everybody has the same style. And, Russell Brand can turn on a camera and sound like a genius for an hour straight.
I know.
But for me, I might need to prepare a little bit. I might need to write down some notes and say, all right, if I'm going to do an AMA podcast that's going to be an hour long, I'm going to have all these questions prepared. Maybe I'll take a couple notes for each one to see like, okay, that's a good idea. Oh, I could tell that story. I could do that. And I'm more prepared, and I feel like I can have a better podcast or a better discussion than if I were to just freestyle it. So you got to know your strengths.
Know yourself.
Yeah. And it takes some time.
It just takes practice. Yeah. Because nobody's super confident and amazing on their first try. It really just takes practice.
Yeah. And like you said, a lot of times we're faced with doubt in the very beginning.
Yeah. And even if you go back and watch my original videos, like I would... I'm talking to the camera, but my eyes would always be like looking off screen because I was shy or something. And then now I'm more comfortable just like looking directly at the camera and talking. So
I've got a question here from Thomas Rahika. What are the downsides of being a minimalist? What thing do you miss the most since you've become a minimalist?
I'm not sure if there is a downside, because you can define what minimalism means for you. Because I think people they think that being a minimalist means you have to cut out things from your life. But if that thing is something that makes you happy, you don't have to cut it out. You know what I mean? So you can be a minimalist in most of your life, but if you really love like shoes or something, I think you're still allowed to have a lot of shoes.
Right.
If you genuinely love each one, I think the point of it is not to have anything extra.
Yeah, I feel like if there's downsides, then you're probably not doing minimalism right.
Yeah.
Like I
think people just think that it's like cutting yourself off, but it's not.
Right. And it is hilarious though, because I'm not sure if you've gotten these comments, but like I certainly get not all the time, but it's like, oh, well, that's not minimalist.
Yes, all the time. People love to judge.
Right.
Yeah.
Where does that come
nothing will make people happy. I think because the term minimalist, I think people have this image in their mind that you have to live in a all white, black and white space and have like, t-shirts in just one color. I really don't know, but there's always like, I think with every movement with like veganism or zero waste, like people are just more judgy. They don't realize that it's a journey and everybody's life looks different. Everybody's version of minimalism looks different.
Yeah, I think at its core, it's about intentionality. So if you're being very intentional with the decisions that you make, whether it's the things you bring into your life or your friends or family, then that's going to be that's what you should be focusing on. You shouldn't be focusing on like, well, should I get rid of this cup or keep this cup? And then maybe do that in the beginning. Maybe the Kondo Marie method. Is that what it's called? Kondo Marie? I'm horrible. KonMari, damn it. I'm really bad.
It's okay.
But like, so like you can go through your stuff, and then, at the end of the day, if you're focusing too much on your stuff, you're probably also missing the point.
Yeah.
Because it's really about moving past it to be able to focus on your life.
What's really important in your life.
What's really important, exactly. I got a question from Josh, them from Canada. At what point is another creator worthy of collaborating with? It's an interesting question.
Well, that is an interesting question. I think if you're trying to collaborate with a creator that you admire, I think the point that it is worth, it doesn't have to be about numbers. It really just has to be about like whether they respect your work and whether you could help them in some way. I think if you can give them value in some way, something that helps them, then because a collaboration is a win-win scenario. It should be win-win. So you should offer something and then they should offer something. I think as long as you can find that medium, then it's possible.
Right. I found early on that was my biggest hurdle when starting the podcast.
Yeah.
Was that I didn't have an audience.
Yeah.
So, and I did have all these self-limiting doubts that like, oh, well, I could never get somebody to come on my podcast because nobody listens to it.
Yeah.
So then I had to figure out, all right, what are other ways that I might be able to influence or inspire somebody to come on my podcast when I don't even have any episodes recorded.
So what did you do?
So for me, that's where video was very helpful,
Yeah.
and creating a really professional website. And these are the things that stand out to me. If somebody asked me to come on their podcast,
isn't that what I said to you in your email? I'm like, your website looks great and your videos look great.
Yeah, and that's what I
really
try to
works.
focus on. And like, even if, you don't even have to share audience numbers or anything like that, and I rarely do.
Yeah.
And then for me, it was like, all right, I create a really beautiful website. And like the video side of things helped out a lot because then I could visually show, like I knew that my video chops I've been working on this for 10, 15.
So
Thank you so much. But I've been doing it for so long that I knew that I was good and that like I could set myself apart just by doing video. I'd be like, okay, he's actually investing time and energy into this craft, right? They see the work I've put in, so then they would be more likely to give an hour, 2 hours of their time to come over and chat.
I think that's a great point. You have to show that you are professional and you create high quality work in some way. I think when you just reach out to someone, they don't know who you are. Like you have to have things to show for it. It doesn't have to be exactly what you're asking for, but like you said, like you had videos that you could show. You just have to show something that is of like a higher quality. You just can't be like, here's an iPhone video, like let's make a video together, Right.
I think what it really comes down to is respect. And when I respect somebody's work, if they're a designer or if they're just, they have an Instagram account that's really beautiful, if I can look and be like, wow, that's like, I don't care how many followers they have.
Exactly.
If they got 5 followers, it doesn't matter. If the work is good, I'm like, wow,
respect it.
They put in the time and energy into this thing. Like, I'll do a photo shoot with you. Yeah, do whatever. That said, time is still important. So you can't do every collaboration under the sun. You have to be a little bit choosy. Sometimes there are certain busy times. Like right now I'm working on another documentary. So I can only do like 2 or 3 big things, whether it's podcast, YouTube channel, and then like main side project. And like that is a majority of my time right now. So during those stints, I unfortunately have to say no to a lot of podcast interviews or time commitments.
And then in that case, like, don't ever feel bad if someone says no to you. It's just how it is. People are busy, and just try again. Try with the next one.
It's like dating in so many ways.
It is. Like, don't take it personally. Just on to the next one.
Yeah, like I know some friends that would get so upset and they would get drunk and like tell somebody off because they didn't respond after 2 days. And the person's like, I was going to respond. I was on vacation.
And now,
it's
you
like,
just made yourself look bad.
Maybe just relax and like you have no idea what somebody's going through.
Exactly.
You have no idea what's going on in their life. And, sure, they could be an asshole or they could be a jerk, but maybe just look on the bright side and be like, well, maybe I was going to say, look on the bright side. Maybe somebody they know died, but look on the bright side, as in maybe it's not personal. It's probably not personal.
Most of the time it's not about you. It's just people get busy.
And you can't do everything.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see here. So we talked a little bit about like money and entrepreneurship and how to make a living online. What have you specifically learned about making money online and making a living as a creator?
I learned a lot of things. One is it's not like, don't expect it to stay stable because it fluctuates. And that's the reality of like being online, having your own business. But one thing I learned is, we mentioned it earlier, is really you have to diversify your income. You can't just depend on, say, YouTube AdSense. You cannot depend on that to bring you your income. You have to be creative and think of other ways to make money, other ways to like bring value to people and make money, whether it's like selling something like a digital product or like, I don't know, just you have to be creative. Like for me, I make money through like YouTube ads, also like branded videos. I have podcast ads. I do affiliate marketing. So whenever I recommend like Audible or something on Amazon, you get a commission. So there's got to be different ways that you make money, and then you have it all add up to your income. Because if you just depend on one thing, you're going to be kind of like, you're susceptible to the changes of that platform or that income stream. So create your own income stream is what I'm saying.
Right. Do you think that people there's a certain time or at least a size of your audience that you should wait for before you try to monetize, or do you think that it's something that you should try to learn and figure out as you're creating?
Yeah, I don't think you should ever focus on the idea of monetizing when you're creating, even whether you're starting out or whether it's like further along in the game. You have to focus on creating the things that you like, creating, like focus on the work, and then the money will come later. But it is hard. So that's why I never recommend anyone to like immediately quit their job and start a YouTube. Like definitely start your online business while you're doing something else, because it's not going to be stable for the first couple years.
How can people make that transition? That to me seems like the tough part.
It is.
Because, and I've certainly had people say, well, like I've got a full-time job, I've got kids, I got this, there's no way I could do a video a week. Yeah. And for me, I'm like, well, if you can't do a video a week, I know it's tough. I know it's not going to be easy, but if you can't do one a week, you're probably not going to be able to do it, period. So what advice would you give people that are trying to find the time to, that's usually the number one excuse, is like, I don't have enough time to do it.
But isn't that everyone's excuse for everything in life? But we all have the same amount of time. We all have 24 hours in a day. So the question is, how bad do you want it? And are you willing to sacrifice something else in order to make time to start this online thing? Because we do have time. We do have time that we're browsing on social media and time. I don't know. People have more time than they think. It's just a matter of like carving out that time. Maybe carve out 2 hours in your night or 2 hours a week to work on it. Whatever you can carve out, like dedicate that time to it. So maybe you can't make one video a week yet, but you can work slowly to create video, like a library of videos, and maybe you could start later and like post them slowly. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You don't have to start posting now, but you can start working towards it. As long as you're taking some action towards it, then you're fine.
Yeah, especially with YouTube. And I think now with pretty much every social media application, you can schedule posts. So that's been helpful to me, is to be like, you know what? Well, I'm going on vacation in 2 weeks. So, and I'm going to be gone for 10 days. And I want to make sure I have videos queued up and a podcast queued up and everything's scheduled and ready to go. So if you're thoughtful, you got to be ahead of the game, and you got to really set yourself up to succeed. Because that's the one thing, is that, like you said, if you just wait until inspiration comes,
it won't come.
It's not going to come.
It's going to take forever.
Yeah. So you have to just make sure that you keep going. Has there been advice that you received early on that really stuck with you, or advice that you continue to go back to? Yeah,
so many. But the one that sticks out the most is, and I learned it in like a business class too. It was, take the biggest risks when you're young. And the youngest you'll ever be is right now, because tomorrow will be a day older, right? So because as you get older, there's just more and more responsibilities and burdens. And so I heard this when I was in college, and that's one of the sayings that motivated me to just like start the channel, just go for the life I wanted, even though it was a big risk. But if I'm not going to do it now, like, what, am I going to wait till I'm 30 to start it? Like, you might as well just start now.
It's I think riskier to not go after it when, you know what I mean? Imagine living a life that you are not just fully inspired by. That, how many days can you put in a job that you just hate, but you have to, because now you have real life responsibilities. It's not going to be easy. I feel like you're going to work way harder in the beginning than you will at the end. I know early on it was, I would be taking the subway late at night, train stations through really bad areas to film weddings and bar mitzvahs and all this stuff that wasn't, right now, like I'm glad I did it then, and there was a part to it that I loved, but it was certainly a grind. You're not making any money, and
when you're young, you're more able to grind, and you're willing to do those shady jobs here and there. Like, we've all done like things that, I don't know, just you wouldn't do now, but you did it because you were young, and that was the time for it.
Right. And I think that's just another reason why you should start as soon as possible. And if you're listening to this and you're 40 years old, it's not too late.
You're still the youngest you will ever be.
You're the youngest you'll ever be. So get started now. If people want to connect with you online, where's the best place to go?
Okay, so you can probably check me out on YouTube. So my name is Lavender. I also have a website, lavender.com, so you can see my YouTube and my podcast there, as well as follow all my other social media.
Cool. Thank you so much for doing the podcast.
Thank you.
Cheers for listening to The Ground Up Show. For more info, mosey on over to groundupshow.com. And as always, stay true blue.
That's not what I told you to read.
Aw, go yourself, you